Good afternoon and welcome to Go Beyond. My name is Alyssa Robinson. I am the digital strategist here at Treach, and I am sitting here with Senior Pastor Reverend Daniel Humbert. And Go Beyond is a time that we come together to dig deeper into the message from Sunday. And Mondays have now turned into going over our Huddle discussion, which is available to you in the TMUMC app, but I have also included a link to it in the description of this video. So click on it, follow along with us, and bring this discussion home to your family, to your friends, to talk through what the message meant to you and what you can learn from it on Sundays. So I'm going to go ahead and jump straight into our first question from the Huddle discussion, which is a tough one. How have I treasured stuff above God? So Daniel and I are going to go through and answer these questions just as if we're sitting around the dinner table. And I'll let you start.
Who developed these questions? I don't like them. How have I treasured stuff above God? Well, so, part of that obviously goes to this whole sense of where my treasure is, my heart will be also. And so where have I treasured something more than God? Because that's the desired goal, right? Is that I treasure God more. And so I just think of where I spend my time and where I spend my money. And if I'm spending more time on any one thing more than God, then that may be stuff that I'm spending, more time on than God. And so for me, that's probably either my phone or electronics in general. That I spend too much time on, and it's gotten worse, of course, during COVID, because I'm more reliant on it, if you will, or at least feel like I'm more reliant on it than I could be, for instance, in prayer or reading scripture or meditating or in spiritual conversations with folks. Not that we got to do that all day long, but I do my electronics more than I do my time with God. That's my stuff.
Well, and for me, I think it's when I find myself worrying about money, because that's when I've lost my trust in what God can do. And I just I'm very much a saver. I always have been. I've been saving money since I was a kid. And so it's just.
Talk to my kids, please.
It's just been something that's always been important to me. And a lot of people, if they had, insight into my finances, they'd say, oh, you're fine. But I'm just always worried that the bottom's going to fall out on me eventually. And how am I set up to take care of myself? Well, the scripture that we were reading on Sunday says the exact opposite of that, and stop worrying about tomorrow and, all of these things that I really struggle with. But when I find myself, tithing is relatively new to me. I've been at a full tithe for about 2 years now. And but I still, every month I'm like, well, maybe I could take some away from that tithe to pay this bill and I have to constantly, it's my grandmother's voice in my head. She's constantly reminding me of like, that money's not yours. That money goes out the door right away. It's not your money. So why are you even thinking about dipping into it? Like, that's God's money. And so I hear that voice in my head because that's how I was trained in my upbringing. But I didn't actually take that on for myself until I was 30. Well, it took me a while.
You actually beat many people. In fact, most people. I won't get into statistics, but very few people actually tithe. Very few Christians actually tithe. And so it's a cool deal that you're there.
Yeah, but that's when I start to worry and I'm like, okay, maybe I could reduce that tithe by $50 or so this month. That's when I know I'm valuing stuff over God.
Yeah, and it's very tempting, isn't it? I mean, it's very tempting. Absolutely.
So question number 2 on today's Huddle discussion: why can't I serve 2 masters?
Ooh. Well, I think that goes to the concept I drew up Sunday about divided loyalties never work. And, I just use simple examples in a marriage or in a friendship or in a work relationship or on a sports team or on a dance troupe or on a band. Divided loyalties don't work. They just don't. And so we all, I mean, I literally consider myself a part of this struggle. We all try to serve God and wealth all the time. I mean, you just described a little bit of that. And I know in my own case, I try to do it by likewise saving for the future. I'm a huge advocate of saving for my future. I think it's just the right thing to do. I think it's really appropriate. I think it's helps us out, obviously, long term. And yet I reflect on the fact that retirement is quite literally a 20th century creation. It didn't exist before roughly 1920 or so. And so no one prior to that ever really got prepared for it. And therefore, why do we? Well, because we're conditioned to, and it sounds very much a good thing to do. And so, but the divided loyalty, I find myself always struggling with. And Kay and I are beyond the tithe in our own giving, and yet I find myself wanting stuff all the time and seeing things that I really desire. And obviously, there's nothing innately wrong with desire, and there's nothing innately wrong with buying stuff. But I often find myself thinking, well, should I get this thing, and would it be an appropriate thing? I often find myself, sort of wondering, how might that affect my relationship with God? Doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does.
Yeah.
It's hard when we have a divided loyalty.
Yeah, and I think that for me, I'm just going to go ahead and fess up to uh one of the scriptures on Sunday was to be a cheerful giver. And that is a sign that God is the master that you choose. I don't think I've gotten to that point yet. To me, a tithe feels like an obligation and responsibility, and it is out of gratitude of what the church has done to me. But I can't tell you I'm excited to see that money leave my bank account every month. Like, it's not my favorite part of the month. But I think that that's where that internal struggle of serving God versus serving culture kind of hits me, because culture tells me that the amount of money that I'm giving to the church is not only unreasonable, but irresponsible.
You're right.
And it does. Like, when I talk to my friends, because I will say, like, my generation doesn't give to the church.
Right.
And when I talk to my friends about it, they think I'm making a terrible, unwise decision by giving to the church. And we can talk about this more on challenging the message on Wednesday. But for me, that is where the two masters come into play of serving God versus serving the culture. And how can I shift my heart to be more cheerful in my giving, so that I know that I am giving in service and gratitude to God?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a big challenge. And for me personally, what helps me in that is to realize I'm giving to God, not to the church. Is the church the conduit? Absolutely. But I'm giving to God. And so in my own head, that's what helps me, is to recognize this is for God and not necessarily the church.
So the last question today is, what can help me become more generous?
Mm. Well, I know in my own life, and I believe, of course, this is a part of what I shared Sunday too, is just gratitude, pure and simple. If I'm more grateful for what's going on in the world, whatever comes my way, I'm trying to. There was an old saying, and now I can't even remember it anymore. But something about, if I can give thanks, then it not only changes my attitude, but it changes my behavior as well. And so, if I can be more grateful for the very things that I have, whatever they are, even things that come my way that I didn't appreciate or necessarily want, or weren't exactly the most positive thing. If I can find some gratitude in even those moments, it helps me to perceive the world differently. And in turn, that helps me to want to give more of my time or my talent or my treasures, because generosity, of course, is not just about money. It's about my lifestyle as well, and kind of how I spend my time and spend my energies, if you will. So for me, and I believe it's biblical, gratitude will help me be more generous.
Mhm. I think that, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I would add to that, on top of living in gratitude, um, being a part of a generous community
Mm.
makes me want to be more generous. When I'm surrounding myself with people who give to organizations, and not just organizations, but are are generous to their friends and generous to their family and want to be giving gifts and buying people dinners and making people meals and delivering them. When I'm a part of that generous community, it inspires me to be more giving as well. And I know that the root of that is gratitude, oftentimes, especially if you've been the recipient of that generosity. But I think just seeing other people do it and the joy that it brings them makes me want to tap into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a little emotional in worship on site yesterday because I was sort of highlighting some of the ways that the internet has helped us reach new people. And I referenced, because it was World Communion Sunday, and I referenced the fact that, we had over 21 countries that have, tapped into our online worship experience. And one of those countries is Ethiopia. And there's a church in Ethiopia that I don't know this for a fact, but I can't fathom any other reason for it, is that that's where our money for water wells went. And we built 8 water wells. We raised $80,000 to build those wells. And I feel convicted that that church must have some way been influenced by that. And they want to kind of go, well, who is this group of people that made this possible for us? And I got overwhelmed by how powerfully generous that was, that we were able to provide clean, fresh drinking water, right, for people that we don't even know. And that's contagious, just like you say. It begets generosity.
Mhm. Well, that is all of our questions and about all the time that we have today, but I would like to invite y'all to join us again on Wednesday at 12:30 as we challenge the message. And I'm going to ask all sorts of questions about why should I be giving? And what does this scripture have to do with me that was written 2,000 years ago? Because, I think that we're all on board with the spiritual practices until it asks us to open up our wallets. At least for me, that has been the case. And so we'll talk more about that on Wednesday. So remember, you can catch all previous episodes of Go Beyond at tmumc.org/go beyond. And we will see you then Wednesday at 12:30.